Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm making this video on my new laptop, so I hope it will work okay. Seems a little bit odd when I watch myself in the screen, but so anyway, I want to share some thoughts about this part of the world, but it can actually refer to many parts, especially of the so-called westernized world, and that is life and living for ordinary people, or for people who are, let's say, poor, not on the top of the ladder, but middle class to basically lower middle class. So what amazes me here in Norway is the changes that has been going on for decade after decade, and it's just being more and more difficult for people to live a decent life in this place. Now, we are situated, or I am rather situated, in Jæren, in Rogaland, approximately 5 kilometers in that direction, westwards to the beach, Brusan Beach. And I am staying in a place called Jæren, or Jæren. Here in Stavanger area, we talk with R like this. Other places in Norway they talk with R. So we were actually influenced by the Germans, but basically also by the French, because the high society people in Stavanger and in Bergen and in Kristiansand and so forth, they wanted to have this skarre R, we call it, when you say R, Bergen, Stavanger, instead of Bergen, Stavanger, Kristiansand. So anyway, Norway has been among the harshest places to survive in the whole world for millennia, probably. And all this area, this place called Jæren, the low laying area of Jæren, used to be obviously under the sea, like a part of the seabed, and it has been covered. Norway as a total was probably covered with, I don't know, really immensely amounts of ice. Okay, so the whole landmass was pressed under. I don't know. I cannot say how tall was the ice, right? But we're talking about major, impressive, in the ice age. Okay, so then when the ice started to melt, it ground up the mountains in Norway, and where there was a bit softer, that's where you have the fjords. So fjords and the valleys are made in the same way. So fjords and valleys have been created basically here in Norway by this ice that was receding and melting and going towards the ocean slowly but surely. That is why you can even see in here in Jæren there is a lot of stones, round boulders, smaller, bigger, whatever, and they have been placed all over this area. So why am I talking about this? Because back in the old days, people could basically go to somewhere like Norway, and the land was basically barren. It was cold and freezing in the winter, but still, even here, you had to fight for your property. The Vikings, they were not very friendly to everybody. So even in this part of the world, we had to fight for survival against the elements, and also against evil, wicked people. But for 1,000 years, Norway has been considered to be a Christian nation. So we're supposed to have a place where there's righteousness, and where people can live in freedom, and live out their dreams, the calling that God gave them, and so forth. But we see that what is called the government is always trying to make life hard for people. So, for example, here in Norway, we have not many people actually when you consider the area of Norway compared to we are like 5 million plus. When I grew up, it was 4 million Norwegians. I think we are still approximately 4 million Norwegians. When I grew up, everybody had blonde hair, blue eyes. It was an exception if somebody had brown eyes and not blonde or dark blonde hair uh, in the school system. I mean, so but today it's totally run over by immigrants with totally different values and cultures. So what I want to talk about is house prices. That's what I want to talk about. So back in the old days, we have a song. We have a song. Uh, Der han sjøl heve tuftene grave, og sett sjøl sine hus oppå deim. Mellom bakkar og berg ut med havet, heve nordmannen fengje sin heim. Der han sjølv heve tuftene grave, og sett sjøl sine hus oppå deim. So it means between the hills, mellom bakkar og berg ut med havet. Okay, between the hills and the smaller mountains, close to the ocean, by the ocean, seaside, the Norwegian found his home, where they settled, they established the foundation, and they built themselves their own houses on those foundations. So back at that time, obviously, you had to be friendly with people in the system, because there has always been people in the system who wanted to exploit and who wanted to rule. But these areas here in Jæren, most of them, they were not practical to cultivate. Well, this is one of the best agriculture areas in Norway, because there's not much soil for agriculture in this country. But the problem was all these boulders spread all over the place. So our forefathers, and my family comes from this area, guys. My family name is Lode, and Lode is a few kilometers up north from where I'm sitting right now. And so these people, they worked hard for generation after generation. I guess they just took some land, and what was there, they had to clean out the boulders. So of course they didn't have trucks, they didn't have dynamite, so they used hand power. Maybe they used some bull or some horses to pull, and then they made these steingjerde, we call them, stone fences. You can see them all over the place here. So that is how they were able to, they cleaned the field, and then they put a fence, so because they had to do something with the boulders, right? So they just marked, like, okay, that's my territory, this is what I have clean, and here is where I'm gonna grow my food and keep my sheep, my goats, my cattle. Right. So obviously in that time it was necessary to live close to the ocean, to the seaside, because of fishing, because of transportation, and also people would basically grow their own food on their own property. But today, in most of these countries that we call in the Western societies, people like to live in cities. They want to have a job, a work, and then now the funny thing about Norway is that it's becomes so extremely expensive and complicated to get a land. I mean, this land was created by God, and it was cultivated by my forefathers. So why is it so difficult to put up a house here? My father and his brothers and one sister, they were 9 kids growing up in a small farm in just outside Stavanger, and they got the farmland was parted into parcels, lands, so they were able to build their houses there. So all of the kids got a beautiful piece of land, and one piece of land like that now is worth only one of those land is worth more than I think 1 million. No, no, not $1 million, but let's say maybe at least 600,000 to 700,000 US dollars for each of those parcels. So my parents, my father, his brothers, they actually got they get a hard start in life because they were very poor. Because my grandfather, he was hit with some health problems, so he couldn't work properly, and there was no pension, real pension at the time. So they were actually starving growing up, but they turned out to become very wealthy because the nation of Norway developed in a very nice manner after the Second World War, after 1945, and it became a very good country with welfare state and all these things. So you can imagine when they had their own land, they don't need to buy any land. They can just build there around their cousins or their brothers and sisters. And that is how it should be, and in my opinion. But in the later decades, since I grew up and started to have an interest of finding an own place to live, it has been very complicated. They have all this kind of rules and regulations everywhere. So when my father and mother, when they established themselves, they could get a loan from the bank. It's called House Bank, Husbanken, and they had to fill out some criteria about how big the house could be, how many square meters, and so forth. But they would get a very decent loan from the government bank, and the interest would be fixed for many years, and it was very low interest. So if you follow the rules there, then you would be able to have a decent house. So most of the houses were I think they were limited to like 100 square meter, 110 square meters, something like that. So you're not allowed. They didn't want the rich people to build palaces, but the houses they built were still like palaces compared to the old houses in Norway. So now when things turned out so well, there were people in politicians and so forth who decided we have to regulate all this stuff. We don't want people to be able to build their own house on the property of their parents. Oh no. So the thing is that in Norway, yes, it's an expensive country. And me, as you can see, maybe by the surroundings, I'm staying in a very simple, shitty place, to be honest. It's a very shitty place. This is an old barn. We have some mouses running around here. I heard them the other day, and yeah. So but it's summertime now, so I feel quite protected from the elements, even though it is cold. But the thing is, I don't have any children here, so I'm just me, myself. I could actually live in a van, but I would say I'm very thankful that I have a place like this. I have a nice bed, everything that you see around me here. Yeah, I was basically given it for free. So because people wanted to move away and they don't want to pay a lot of money for the moving company or for trying to sell it, and nobody want to sell because everybody in Norway, the middle class, since I was a teenager, they grew up to be very wealthy. You see this furniture behind me, this dark oak stuff. This is a part of what my parents bought when they established themselves in Stavanger. My father built a house there we moved in 1974, and so those furniture were actually imported from Romania. Very nice, sturdy oak furniture, which is still, some of them are still here around with me, so it gives good memories. So the problem is that why is it so expensive to have a land? Especially like me, my family comes from Stavanger. I was raised in Stavanger, and why wouldn't it be possible for me to establish myself? Now you also had these. They built both houses, like row houses, and some few, not many, but few block apartments that were very affordable. You had to be a member of this building boligbyggelag, or building construction society, something like that. It's like you have a membership for many years, and when you grow up, you would be able to buy an affordable housing. But they just abandoned all that stuff in the middle of the 1980s, and it was privatized, and so the prices went up, and everything went up, guys. So my point is, like in Norway, we have so much land areas that are not arable. I mean, you cannot plant anything. It's just mountain, rock bed and so forth. And dynamite was invented by a Swedish guy. I think that was the Alfred Nobel, who invented dynamite long time ago. And we have bulldozers, we have excavators, so it should be possible to find land for every Norwegian who want to have a land. And to make it more efficient, they could develop for the self-cost for people to live and to put up to have a nice, decent property, maybe 1,000, 2,000 square meters, something like that. So you can put up a nice villa and a garage. You can have some hobby there, but you have the common system with the neighbors. So that will be very easy. And they have done it in the area now, outside Stavanger, because people are very mad that, why are you building down the food soil, the soil that provides us with food, where we can grow potatoes and so forth. But there are plenty of areas that are not particularly good for agriculture. Okay, even the goats and the sheep have problems finding something there. So why don't they allow people to build and to make to make their own fortune, to make their own life? Why all these regulations? And then when you have a property now, they call it the government. They say, we're gonna tax your property. It's crazy. This property was built up maybe by your ancestors, and it belongs to your family, or you are a newcomer. Your ancestors didn't have anything, but you worked hard for years and years and invested, and then you paid tax for the money, correct? And with this taxed money, and same with your parents, they taxed their income. So their houses were built by taxed income. But now the so-called government say, okay, you are trapped now because you have a house and it's not on wheels, correct? It's actually you are grounded, and you are grounded in our community. So we're gonna tax you guys. And if your parents die, when they die, and if you're gonna inherit something, they wanted to take a lot of stuff from you. We call it a death tax. As of now, it has been a little bit relieved by the former government, so that's a great thing. But why would you tax anybody's property? Why would you have to pay tax to live in a house that even is not yours? It belongs to the bank. Most of us, we have to borrow a lot of money from the bank, right, to buy a house here in Norway and other parts of the world. And so why would they tax you? Because if you're not the owner, and still we have to pay property tax. I mean, there's so many things. They are destroying our lives, really. You can see in Australia the same thing happened. The Chinese were allowed to buy properties in Australia, and many Chinese, they have a lot of money, so much money, and you don't even know where they got it from. I'm quite sure they didn't get it from working on the floor level in a factory. Just like in Russia, so many people, when the communist system failed in Russia, so many people got super rich. The same in Romania, but most people, they are still suffering. And so that's why we're always looking for new pastures or new land, correct? Because we want to have a decent life. Everybody wants to have a decent life where you can take care of your family, you can have a work, a job, and so forth. But the system is actually destroying the chance of people to have a normal life. That's when I was with my first wife here in Norway, and that was my plan, to keep that wife for the whole life. But she had other plans. She didn't want to keep me for the rest of my or her life. So she kicked me out. She kept everything, and then so it's very hard for people to establish themselves, right? She got some help from her parents, so that's why we were able to buy some property in the first place. And now here is the evil circle. It's the spinning wheel, the hamster wheel, right? You see the hamster is just running and running and running and running, and the wheel is turning around, and and by the end of the day, when people are old and they realize, whoa, what happened? Why are we? What happened to our life? Maybe they didn't even have kids because the system doesn't allow for you to have kids. So what I did, I wanted to have kids. I have 5 children in Norway. Is that we moved out from the city and we moved to Karmøy, which is a big island north of Stavanger. You have to cross the ocean there a little bit. And so in Karmøy, it was not a very popular place for people to live. It can be difficult with work there at times. So we basically were able to buy almost cash for free an old property, beautiful property with view to the ocean in the countryside. But if you drive like 15 minutes with a car, you would be there in the town, So now that's my point, is that the system here is basically screwing us. We cannot just go and find a place and clean that land. Oh no, everybody claims that land was claimed already a long time ago. And if it's not claimed, it's owned by the state. So the state is supposed to be you and me, correct? So why don't the state help people to establish themselves in a much larger degree? They're saying people don't they don't make children anymore. So of course that is a financial issue in many places, also like in Japan and in South Korea, is that people cannot, both of them have to work. The system is like you have a couple, man and a woman. If there's a man and a man, they cannot make kids anyway, you understand, got me? So a man and a woman, they get married and they're supposed to build a family and supposed to have children. But if both of them have to work 100% and even more than 100%, how can they have energy and possibility to have children? Like in China, they allowed them to have 1 child maximum because they wanted the labor force to be active. And this is some kind of communism, all this shit. It's like you cannot really live your life as you want. If you want to have, like in the old days, I'm talking about maybe, because I know people who, of course, they're dead now, but they told me how it was back in, like around, even before the Second World War, so like 1915, 1920s, 1930s, and so forth, and up. A man could actually work for a few years, maybe 5-6 years, and he had enough cash to buy and build a house. So when he was already established with his own house, then he would get a wife and get married, and they get a lot of kids. It was very common for Norwegians to have 7, 8, 9, 11, 10 kids and upwards. That was the standard. So they have made it so complicated now that almost no Norwegians want to have kids. That's the financial part is one. The other thing is, in our part of the society, I mean the Western societies, is also that the men have no rights. So the women kick out their husbands, and the government will force money from the ex-husband, from the father of those kids, without him having the chance to grow up with his own kids, but he has to pay via the government to support his ex-wife. So nobody wants to get married anymore, because that is basically the system, So how can we beat the system? That is what you have to use our brain. How to beat the system, how to break out of the system. I was thinking maybe here in Norway, I would I have moved back to Norway as of now, so I am legally now a resident in my own country. Amazing, huh? uh, so uh, I see that maybe I hope I can get a job. I hope I can get a job, and I'm staying as of now. I'm staying in this old barn, and I have a bed here. You can see here. The bed is there. Okay. It's freaking cold in the winter, I can assure you. I have a guitar there. I have my books. And basically my whole life history is gathered here from Norway. So if I can keep this kind of place, then I will be able to stay here. It has some root in Norway, but the salaries are amazing here. So if I can get a job and work and then save up some money, then I would be happy. That's one of the reasons I am here in Norway. So and then go, like my family now, they are in the Philippines, correct? And of course I would like them to come here to Norway and for Jalin to work in Norway. The problem though is everything is so expensive here. Taxes are extremely high, and yeah, it's probably the most expensive country in the world. So you have to run that hamster wheel to be able to come by in Norway. So we'll see what will happen. But again, the government, the system, they are really destroying people's lives. So if you have any tips on where you can go, I'm planning on going to Sweden to buy property in Sweden. But Sweden is also falling apart because of mass immigration. And one of the reasons why rents are so high and property prices have gone through the roof here in Norway is because of all the immigrants. And many of these immigrants, they get their rent paid by the government. While me, I have to live in a chicken house. Okay, guys, hope you enjoy my video. And please leave some comments about where you think people can go to beat the system, what we can do to beat the system. Thank you very much.